At some point last year, this article showed up in newspapers all over the world. The police had taken down this massive child pornography network. It was on the darknet and it had nearly 90,000 members. Lots and lots of illegal material was shared and lots of messages were sent through the network. Every day, every hour, every second. People from all over the world were logging into this network anonymously, which makes it extremely difficult for the police to track them down. Now, some of these people only had the aim of collecting child abuse material online. Others also had the aim of abusing children themselves. Regardless, they all found this deep satisfaction in discussing their deepest fantasies and experiences with regards to child abuse online. Apparently, there's a market for this. Well, this makes me ask the question, how can we keep the world of the internet safe for our children? How can we reduce and maybe even eliminate the problem of child exploitation online? Well, that's quite a question to ask. As a psychologist, having worked directly with sex offenders previously, and now working for the Dutch National Police Child Exploitation Unit, I can simply tell you this. Unfortunately, we will never be able to eliminate every possible risk out there. However, there are definitely ways of making the world of the internet a safer place for our children. And the criminal justice system is one solution, but if we want to do more, I need the help of all of you. And in the next 15 minutes or so, I will tell you exactly what we can do and why. But first, let's go back to the basics. At one point, a website was under law enforcement investigation on which 1.3 million images were available. And this is only one website. From experience, I can tell you many, many more websites have been online. So the internet really is a great thing, but it gives us lots of opportunities, but it does have a downside as well. Because every time that offender presses that send or post button, a victim is re-victimized. Every time that picture is multiplied, re-victimization occurs. It's not really surprising then that all law enforcement agencies report massive increases in cases in the last couple of years. Canada is even talking about 233% increase in the last 10 years. So the problem seems to be growing exponentially. And of course, we can partly explain this increase in the ease with which images are multiplied and the expansion of the internet. So we're not talking about absolute numbers of growth in offenders and victims, but still we're having a problem. Well, this may sound really shocking, but it's not really surprising considering that international research repeatedly portrays that 0.5 up to even 3% of our male population has some form of pedophilic interest. I'm talking about our male population here today because that's what most research is conducted on. I'm not saying that females don't have this difficulty at all, it's just few is known about them. But 0.5 up to 3%. Consider the Netherlands. We have 8.5 million men in total. So this percentage equates with 42,500 up to 255,000 men. That's all inhabitants of a medium-sized city in the Netherlands. To make it even more concrete, I was told that there's about 200 of you in the audience today. Well, looking at you, I think there's slightly more females than males, but let's say that there's 80 males of you here today in the audience. We can all do the maths now, can't we? Statistics indicate that there will be one or two of you who are struggling with some form of pedophilic interest. And what this means is that most probably there will be someone in your environment, someone you know, someone like your neighbor, like your colleague, like your football mate, maybe even your husband or son, who who is struggling with these sort of feelings. The only thing is, you don't know about it. And here we get to a notion that I really want to emphasize, because even though these percentages are massive, most of these people know that they have feelings that they should repress. So most of these people don't act out on it. They don't offend, which is great, isn't it? But the problem is, these people can't talk about their feelings because they know that they will be hated for it. I truly do believe that every person is longing for love at some point in their life. And what if this love that you really wish for will forever be impossible? That must be a really lonely situation to be in. It's like telling me, we know that you love your boyfriend and we don't minimize this love. However, you cannot act out on it ever. And on top of that, you won't be able to talk about it with anyone. So unfortunately, sometimes it does go wrong. Sometimes people do start offending. And I'm not justifying this. On the contrary, I work for police. I'm just saying that it's a logical thing to happen. So what do we do with this knowledge? Well, I think there will be many of you telling me now, you know what, let's just ban all these people from society, let's just lock them all up and let's just leave them somewhere far away from our children. And from an emotional point of view, I can kind of understand what you're saying. I became an auntie last year for the first time. My little nephew, he just turned 1. Absolutely crazy about the little boy. And we just got back from a family holiday. And we really enjoyed the sun and the beach. The weather was lovely. And I simply cannot imagine the possibility that my little nephew wouldn't be able to walk around in his swimming wear because some adult would be sexually attracted to him. Yes, from an emotional point of view, I can kind of understand that you would want to eliminate these people from society. However, it doesn't make sense. And that's because we're talking about biology. We're talking about a sexual orientation, something that we simply cannot change. And on top of that, every day, new people are born with the same difficulty. So it's not practical to eliminate these people from society. They haven't done anything wrong. So rather than letting our emotions rule, please, let's be mature about this problem. Let's think about clever solutions. Because more importantly, this pretended solution doesn't take into account the variation between offenders and offenses. What we think about when we hear about sex offenders is what we see portrayed in the media. And the media usually reports about the most extreme cases, the real violent offenders, those people that are portrayed as monsters and less than human. You may have heard about the case of Joseph Fritzl in Austria. He locked up his daughter in a cellar and abused her for years. Maybe you've heard about Robert M. in the Netherlands. He abused 83 children within the ages of 0 and 4 in a daycare facility where he was working. I think most countries know a notorious case like that, and these are the type of cases that all our popular TV series are based on. And I can kind of understand that you would want to eliminate these type of people from society. But the problem is, this distorts our view of the factual situation. Because in fact, sex offenders aren't all those violent, gruesome men waiting in the bushes for children they can attack. On the contrary, research portrays that the great majority of children that are abused, I'm talking 70, 80, maybe even 90%, they're abused by someone they know, someone close to them, someone from their neighborhood, their family, or their sports club. And now I hear you think, yeah, but you know what, whoever the offender and whatever seriousness the crime, they should still all be punished for it. Yes. But what if this time the offender is your neighbor, your colleague, your football mate? What if this time the offender is your husband or son? What if this time the police shows up at your doorstep? I hear you think now, well, yeah, but I know my family, I know my friends, and it wouldn't happen. Not in my backyard, not in my family. And this is because we tend to think in stigmas. We tend to think that people who would do this, they're either really pathetic, lonely men spending 24/7 on the internet waiting for children they can groom. Or they must be really psychopathic men, really violent, with no conscience whatsoever. I can tell you from experience, this stigma is simply not correct. In my career, I've seen sex offenders with a lot of life potential. Social, charismatic men. Men with no psychological disorders whatsoever. Men with jobs, with wives. Men you wouldn't ever believe to get in trouble with the police at all. Men like your football mate, like your neighbor. Men like your colleague or your husband or your son. Where I'm heading at is, we shouldn't think about this problem only from a criminal justice perspective. Yes, definitely, law enforcement is a great solution. Repression is a great solution, but it isn't always the right one. Of course, when someone has committed a lot of offenses and doesn't ever intend to stop, we should punish them. But the criminal justice system has always meant to have been a last resort, and we should keep it that way. Think about this 18-year-old who took a nude picture of his 15-year-old girlfriend and then shares it with a friend who sends it to the whole school. Yes, definitely, we should have a proper conversation with them. But should they really learn the hard way? Should they have a criminal record for the rest of their lives? What about this 20-year-old? Silently been struggling for a couple of years now with pedophilic feelings, and who is now thinking about approaching children online. Don't you think that someone like that would be better off if we were willing to speak to him? If we were willing to help? If we would want to listen and help him towards treatment? Consider this example. A couple of years ago, I was speaking at a conference after which I got approached by a lady, and she had a 5-year-old daughter who just received love letter and flowers from a guy who was living in their area. Well, what this lady already did was she went over to the guy's house. He was in his mid or late 30s. She spoke to him, and it turned out that indeed he was really in love with the little girl, and he couldn't hide it no longer. She spoke to him, she had a really good conversation, and she convinced him to find psychological help. And what she asked me was, shouldn't I be concerned now? I'm really worried now to let my child play on the street. Well, I can completely understand, definitely. But what I told her was, at least now you know where the dangers are. And now you can manage this risk. Maybe you've prevented this guy from starting to commit crimes at the first place. 0.5 up to 3%. There's many, many, many more people struggling with these feelings. We just don't know where they are. I can assure you that law enforcement is working really, really hard every day to get a grip on this problem. There's a great focus on prioritization and working on the most dangerous offenders, the most extreme cases. And to get back to the newspaper article that I showed you in the beginning, I started with a bit of a negative vibe because I wanted to make you aware of the problem that we're facing. But at the same time, behind the scenes, law enforcement is working really hard. They're professionalizing and working together internationally to really get a grip on the tip of the iceberg of people active on these networks. And I must say, I'm really proud. However, we can do so much more. And in order to do so, I need your help, of every single one of you out there. Because law enforcement only is not going to arrest their way out of this problem. And that's because we're talking about a public and a mental health issue, which is a shared responsibility for all of us. So please, let's be open about the problem. Let's acknowledge that this problem exists, and let's make sure that people will find the strength to come forward. The biggest mistake is to say that it won't happen in my area, because that is to deny the problem, because it happens everywhere. We've all seen the #MeToo discussion, haven't we? We never thought that this was such a big issue until people started to step forward. And then the problem portrayed itself in all its varieties. So how can we be open about the problem now? How can we break the taboo? Well, first of all, let's stop with hate. Let's stop with negative vibes in the media, and let's stop with throwing rocks at offenders' houses, because it's not going to take us anywhere. It's never going to solve this problem. But rather, please, let's be rational about this problem. Let's talk about it. Let's be open, and let's be a mature society. What if your son would approach you one day and would tell you that he's struggling with pedophilic feelings? Would you beat him up? Or would you want to help? It's only with this openness that people will find the strength to come forward, and that people will find the help they need. And I truly do believe that this will bring us one step closer to prevention. However, as for me, if this talk or even my daily job helps to saving only just one child, for me that's a solution in itself. Thank you very much.